Last week, many US tech companies were cautious, even a bit gloomy in giving forecasts for the third quarter. And I recall news about Microsoft and Google. We chatted about that. Worries about the general economy, coupled with talk of another recession, are increasing. At the same time, many tech firms are in the midst of big product transitions. Are they ever not in big product transitions, one wants to ask. Investors are expecting Apple to launch its next iPhone in October, but third quarter results expected soon, which are typically helped by back-to-school sales, and they're looking weaker than normal. For more on the technology space, Toby Shapshak, editor at Stuff Magazine, joins us. Toby, Apple is the company that's expected to report. I don't think we have the results yet, but what sort of thing are we expecting? And as I said, last week we had Google and Microsoft, varying performance there.
Well, Microsoft announcing its first ever loss in 26 years of trading, and it was a $512 million, $192 million loss. But that was due to an acquisition in 2007 they made of a company called Aquintive. But Google at the same time announced an 11% surge in profits. What people are expecting from Apple is that they're going to be weaker sales on the iPhone 4S because everyone's expecting the iPhone 5 to come out in October. And this happened last year around the same time. Google's saying that there's a search, there's the phrase iPhone 5 is mentioned every 11 seconds on its website. So enormous amount of interest. I certainly see lots of people saying, when's it coming, what's happening, what are we going to do with it? The thing is I don't want anyone to panic, but Apple is a business and they are in the business of selling us new iPhones and new iPads and new laptops, and they're extremely cyclical. They announced new iPads in March, and for the last year or so they announced new iPhones in October. So it's always going to be like that. They announced the new iPhone 2 days before Steve Jobs died. It's always going to happen, and there's no telling the public at large, because they get completely worked up with this insane hype that Apple managed to generate about its products by so ruthlessly not pre-announcing.
Are you implying
anything.
that the hype is not deserved and we should treat these products in a more sober, rational way and not get excited?
Well, earlier this year I was forced to coin a phrase, a rule, Shapshak's first law of cell phone upgrades, and they're always thinner, faster, and have a bigger camera. And that pretty much covers just about every new product launch you're ever going to see. So, but there's no telling people. I mean, Apple manages to attract this disproportionate amount of expectation and hype about their products, and they do tend to lead the industry.
I've discovered I'm what's called a late joiner. I wait to see what the others do, and then, of course, if you don't buy this one, there's going to be another version in 6 months' time cheaper. That seems to be the trend, Wayne.
I've just got used to my BlackBerry. But
just worked out how to use it. There's a thing there that makes tea for you. Have you found that one?
But my whole family is now going onto iPhone, so I suppose in a year or two's time I'll have to, because then I'll be the only dinosaur.
This is becoming like 78 records.
I know it is, yeah, no, very much so. I thought I was so fancy with my BlackBerry. Now it seems I'm old-fashioned again.
But should we care about this, Lelo? I mean, these companies are not available to local investors, are they? What effect does it have on our landscape? This perpetual improvement and that law, someone's law, that every year or 18 months, the total computer capacity doubles in the world.
Well, every 18 months, the increase, the power of the processor doubles and the price halves. And it's actually an applicable law in a whole bunch of other places. It's applicable in green technology, for instance, but you're about to say.
Yeah. Well, I actually wanted to ask what the impact of the litigation with Samsung about its own releases globally will have on Apple's volumes going forward.
Well, isn't that fascinating? Because the Wall Street Journal estimates that 29% of an iPhone, or the iPhone 4S, comes from Samsung. Samsung make the components, and yet they compete against each other very fiercely in the smartphone market. And according to the latest results, the latest quarter, so the second quarter, Samsung had slightly more smartphone sales than Apple. So between the two of them, they had something like 90% of the profit in that really rich top end of the market.
What are we expecting from these Apple results?
Well, Bloomberg's saying there's going to be a 35% increase in profit and a 31% increase in sales. You know, and they're going to say that, you know, looking at those figures, they say it's going to be Apple's slowest growth in the last 2 years. Apple's just a phenomenon. You know, it's one of the strange attractors in the stock market, isn't it? It proves the rule by being the exception. I mean, there just seems to be nothing to it that keeps driving the stock price up and up and up.
How should businesses, just to finish off there, Toby, how should businesses think about it? We're getting to the point where it becomes a part of your job description to have one of these things. Intranets, extranets, as we
Only
used to call
one.
them. Exactly. So how should businesses be thinking about adding value to their companies by getting these things for their employees only 6 months later, like the cell phones? I remember working at SA Breweries and getting a brick.
Yeah.
And 3 weeks later, they replaced the brick because there was one half the size.
Well, I mean, you know, there was a time where your cell phone looked like something like that. You know, that's my other cell phone. Well, the good news is, and anyone who's ever been at university will have heard the phrase BYOB, which is bring your own booze. And it's been changed to BYOD, which is bring your own device. So the good news for companies is that their employees are going to buy their own cell phones and their own iPads and their own tablets, their own Samsung Galaxy S3s or whatever device they want. And it's up to the company to find a way to put that device on their network and to add the security. I think BlackBerry's in a terrible position where at one point everybody got a BlackBerry simply because it was a reliable, cost-effective, secure way of getting your email. Well, you know, for not much more, I get as much data via my iPhone as I did via my BlackBerry, and it's become a situation where people are bringing their own devices to work and want to use it. You know, the companies save in terms of the cost of having to pay for the device, but the other concerns, can they make it secure? What happens if someone's phone gets stolen? BlackBerry had a system where you could wipe the device. These are other considerations that they need to be
Well, and you have
aware
things
of.
like tennis elbow and things like that. You're going to get BlackBerry knuckles.
Well, the interesting thing is the Japanese have a phrase called Odai Sendai, which means thumb generation. And there's a generation of teenagers, I mean, this is a phrase I picked up 10 years ago, that started to use the thumb in the same way that our generation used the index finger. They would point, they'd push buttons with it, they'd do things. The thumb generation. I mean, it's old school now. I mean, you've ever seen a teenager texting?